The sensor technician's four hands moved in perfect harmony across the crystalline control surface, each finger tracing patterns that would have appeared random to human eyes. Senior observer Kexri had watched this same routine for decades, the careful monitoring of the border between stellar Concordat space and the unexplored regions beyond. In all that time, nothing truly remarkable had ever appeared on their screens. Until today. Senior observer, the technician's voice wavered, all three of their eyes widening. I'm detecting an anomaly at the edge of our sensor range. Mass reading indicates this can't be correct. Kexri floated closer, their levitation field humming softly. Show me. The main display crystallized into existence, showing a vessel that defied Concordat sensibilities. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of their largest ships, yet it lacked the elegant crystalline structures and energy lattices that marked advanced spacecraft design. Instead, its hull was a patchwork of thick metal plates, each bearing the marks and scars of long-distance space travel. Are those impact craters? Kexri asked, unable to hide their disbelief. Affirmative. The vessel appears to have sustained multiple meteorite impacts, but instead of replacing the damaged sections, they've been repaired, reinforced, even. The sensor data continue to stream in, painting an increasingly bizarre picture. The ship's power source appeared to be a series of controlled fusion reactions, technology the Concordat had abandoned centuries ago in favor of zero-point energy matrices. The hull was layered with what appeared to be primitive kinetic weapons, and the entire structure was surrounded by a ascent field of small, maneuverable craft. This design philosophy, Kexri mused, it's unlike anything in our database. The redundancy alone is. They were interrupted by a new signal. The unknown vessel was broadcasting, not just on standard communication frequencies, but across the entire spectrum. And it wasn't just data. It was music. The sound filled the observation center, a powerful melody that spoke of vast oceans and the bond between crew and vessel. The translation matrix quickly identified it as Anchors Aweigh, a traditional song from a species that called themselves humans. They're not trying to hide, the technician noted, their voice mixing awe and concern. They'd want us to see them, to hear them. Kexri studied the vessel's approach vector. It was deliberate, maintaining a steady course that would bring it to the nearest Concordat way station in approximately 6 hours. The ship's movement suggested absolute confidence, not in its ability to outmaneuver or outgun potential threats, but in its ability to simply endure them. Send a priority message to Central Command, Kexri ordered. Include all sensor data, and they paused, choosing their words carefully. Note that while the technology appears primitive by our standards, there's something about this vessel that suggests we shouldn't underestimate its capabilities. As if in response to this observation, new data appeared on their screens. The ship was bleeding heat from its engines in a way that would have been considered catastrophically inefficient by Concordat engineers, yet it maintained its course with unwavering precision. Small crews in bulky environmental suits could be seen moving across its hull, performing maintenance even while the ship was underway, a practice that seemed unnecessarily dangerous. They're sending an identification signal, the technician reported. They're calling themselves the TNS Steadfast. The prefix stands for Terran Naval Ship. Kexri felt an unfamiliar sensation in their neural clusters, a mixture of curiosity and unease. This vessel, this human ship, represented something their centuries of space exploration hadn't prepared them for, a completely different approach to surviving the challenges of space. Not through perfection or technological superiority, but through sheer, unrelenting persistence. Well, Kexri said softly, watching the massive ship's steady approach, I believe our routine border patrol just became significantly more interesting. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the helm of the TNS Thermopylae, her fingers drumming a steady rhythm on the worn metal railing. The massive view screen before her displayed a sprawling asteroid field that the Concordat had deemed impassable, a judgment that brought a slight smile to her face. Engineering reports all systems nominal. Captain, Lieutenant Park announced from his station. Though Chief Rodriguez says the port heat exchangers are, and I quote, singing a little off-key today. Chen nodded, understanding perfectly. After 5 years commanding the Thermopylae, she knew every vibration, every hum, every subtle shift in her ship's voice. The port heat exchangers weren't malfunctioning. They were just expressing personality. The Conquerors observation vessel maintained its position at the edge of the field, its crystalline form glinting in the light of the distant sun. Their latest transmission had politely suggested an alternate route, one that would add 3 weeks to their journey but avoid any risk of collision. Send our regards to the Conquerors observers, Chen ordered, but inform them that we'll be proceeding as planned. Helm, take us in, 1/4 thrust. The Thermopylae's engines thrummed deeper as the massive ship moved forward. On the auxiliary displays, Chen could see the Conquerors observers' sensor readings spiking as they registered the human vessel's approach. First asteroid cluster approaching, navigation reported. Plotting intercept vectors for gravitational assist. This was where human ships differed most dramatically from their Conquerors counterparts. Where they saw chaos and danger, humanity had learned to see opportunities. Each asteroid became a slingshot, each gravitational well a chance to conserve fuel. The first impact came exactly as calculated. A glancing blow that scraped paint from the Thermopylae's hull, but sent them hurtling precisely where they needed to go. The Conquerors vessel's sensors must have been screaming. Hull breach in Section 7. Damage control reported calmly. Repair teams responding. No change in ship performance. Another thing that puzzled their alien observers, the concept of acceptable damage. The Thermopylae's hull wasn't meant to emerge pristine from every journey. It was designed to take hits, to bend rather than break, to be repaired even under the worst conditions. Picking up transmissions from the Conquerors ship, communications announced. There, expressing concern about our hull integrity. Chen allowed herself another small smile. Send them our repair team statistics. Let them see how quickly we handle these little scratches. The Thermopylae continued its dance through the asteroid field, each impact carefully calculated, each scrape and dent part of the plan. Repair crews in their heavy suits moved across the outer hull, patching breaches and reinforcing stress points even as new ones formed. To the Conquerors observers, it must have looked like organized chaos. Captain, Lieutenant Park called out, the Conquerors ship is requesting permission to share their observations with their central command. They seem particularly interested in our repair protocols. Permission granted, Chen replied. And add a note. Tell them this is why we call it Dancing with Thunder. As if to emphasize her point, a massive asteroid grazed their starboard bow, the impact sending a deep resonance through the ship's frame. The crew barely noticed, long accustomed to their vessel's peculiar way of navigating obstacles. Approaching midpoint, navigation announced. All trajectories holding steady. Chen watched the patterns of asteroids shifting before them, a dangerous ballet that had claimed countless ships before humans mastered its rhythm. The Thermopylae's thick hull bore the scars of similar passages, each one a lesson learned, each repair a testament to human persistence. Send a message to engineering, she ordered. Tell them to let those port heat exchangers sing however they want. Our Conquerors friends could use a lesson in appreciating imperfect music. The distress call came at ship's midnight, cutting through the relative quiet of Gamma Shift. 3 Conquerors research vessels had ventured too close to an unstable star in the Carina sector, their delicate sensors drawn to the unusual radiation patterns. Now they were trapped, their crystalline hulls already showing signs of stress from the approaching solar storm. Captain Chen had been asleep for barely 2 hours when the call reached her quarters. She was on the bridge in 3 minutes, still zipping up her uniform jacket as she took command. Status report, she ordered, scanning the tactical display. 3 Conquerors vessels, all Luminary-class research ships, Lieutenant Park reported. The solar storm will hit their position in approximately 40 minutes. Their shields are already at 60% from the radiation. Chen studied the sensor data. The Conquerors ships were beautiful things, all elegant lines and translucent surfaces. They were also completely unsuited for what was coming. Plot an intercept course, she commanded. All hands to emergency stations. Wake up engineering and tell them we're going to need everything they can give us. The Thermopyla's engines roared to life, pushing the massive ship toward the endangered vessels. On the main screen, the star's surface writhed with increasing violence, preparing to unleash its fury. Conquerors vessels are hailing us, communications announced. They're advising against our approach. They say their calculations show our hull won't withstand the radiation. Send them our compliments, Chen replied, and inform them that their calculations don't account for human stubbornness. Helm, maintain course. As they drew closer, the radiation levels began to climb. Warning indicators flashed across multiple displays, highlighting systems under stress. The Thermopyla's thick hull absorbed what it could, but even its robust construction had limits. Engineering reports hull temperature rising, Park called out. Heat exchangers are operating at maximum capacity. Chen nodded. Signal the Conquerors ships. Tell them to form up behind us. We'll shield them from the worst of it. The research vessels hesitated, their elegant forms hanging in space like frozen crystals. Chen could imagine their crew's confusion. The human approach to rescue operations must seem crude, even primitive, compared to their sophisticated emergency protocols. Storm front approaching. Navigation warned. Impact in 5 minutes. Deploy repair teams, Chen ordered. I want them ready to move the moment we're in position. The order raised eyebrows even among her own crew. Sending teams out in these conditions wasn't standard procedure. It was barely even sane. But Chen had seen the structural analyses. They were going to take damage, and they couldn't afford to wait. An old melody crackled over the ship's comm system. A sea shanty, its rhythm perfect for coordinated work. The repair crews had started their tradition early today. What is that sound? The Conquerors transmission carried equal parts confusion and curiosity. That, Chen replied, it's how humans work together when things get rough. Form up behind us now. Trust in steel and stubbornness. The storm hit like a physical wave. Radiation alarms screamed across every deck. The repair crews, secured by magnetic boots and safety lines, began their work even as the hull temperature soared past safety limits. Hull breach on Deck 4, damage control reported calmly. Repair teams responding. Secondary breach on Deck 7. Teams dispatched. Through it all, the old songs continued, transmitted across all frequencies. The repair crews coordinated their efforts through verses about ancient sailors and distant shores, their voices steady despite the chaos around them. The Conquerors ships, finally understanding, slipped into position behind the Thermopyla's bulk. Their sensors recorded everything. The constant repairs, the coordination between crews, the way the human ship systems adapted to maintain protection despite mounting damage. Well, Chen said softly, watching her crew work miracles in impossible conditions, let's show them how humanity handles a storm. Senior researcher Valtic moved through the corridors of the TNS Thermopyla with measured steps, their hover stabilizers working overtime to compensate for the ship's constant vibration. As the Conquerors' leading expert on human naval traditions, they had been granted unprecedented access to observe the vessel's operations. The vibration, Valtic noted to their human guide, Lieutenant Santos, it never ceases. Santos smiled, running her hand along a nearby bulkhead. That's just her heartbeat. Every ship has its own unique rhythm. Spend enough time aboard, and you can tell if something's wrong just by the way she hums. The concept both fascinated and puzzled Valtic. Conquerors ships were designed to operate in perfect silence, their systems tuned to eliminate any mechanical resonance. Yet humans seemed to prefer these imperfect symphonies of machinery. They passed a wall covered in what Valtic had learned were called battle patches, sections of hull that had been repaired after combat or natural damage. Each bore a small plaque with a date and location. Why preserve these marks? Galactic asked. Surely a complete restoration would be more efficient. Santos paused, her expression thoughtful. Each patch tells a story. See this one. She pointed to a particularly large repair. That's from the den of incident. The Thermopylae took a hit meant for a civilian transport. We keep the patch to remember why we fight. The pair entered the ship's memorial hall, where holographic displays showed vessels from Earth's history. Wooden ships with billowing sails, steel battleships cutting through ocean waves, and early space vessels that looked impossibly fragile by modern standards. Thermopylae, Galactic said carefully, pronouncing the unfamiliar word. This name holds significance. It's an ancient battle from Earth's history, Santos explained. 300 warriors held off an army of thousands, buying time for their people to prepare a defense. Every human ship carries a name with similar weight. Galactic's neural clusters tingled with understanding, a reminder of past courage to inspire present actions. Exactly. When you serve on a ship named after heroes, you think twice about backing down from a fight. They'd reached engineering, where Chief Rodriguez was conducting what he called a manual diagnostic. He moved from station to station, eyes closed, one hand trailing along various pipes and conduits. Is the chief unwell? Galactic asked, concerned by this unusual behavior. Santos chuckled. He's listening to the ship. After 20 years in engineering, he can spot problems before the sensors do. Says machines talk to those who know how to listen. The chief opened his eyes and made a small adjustment to a nearby control panel. The ship's ever-present vibration shifted slightly, settling into what Galactic had to admit was a more harmonious rhythm. You treat these vessels as living entities, Galactic observed. In a way they are, Santos replied. Every ship in the fleet has its own personality, shaped by its crews and experiences. The Thermopylae is stubborn, protective. The Magellan is more curious, always eager to explore. The Normandy is aggressive, always pushing the envelope. They passed a group of crew members polishing a brass bell, another tradition that puzzled the Conquerors observer. Your people maintain so many ancient practices, Galactic noted. Even as you advance technologically, you cling to these old ways. Santos nodded. These traditions connect us to every sailor who came before us. When we ring that bell, we're not just marking time. We're echoing every ship's bell that ever sounded on Earth's oceans. Galactic made careful notes in their neural recorder. The Conquerors had always seen ships as tools, elegant but ultimately disposable. Humans saw them as something more. Partners, protectors, repositories of memory and tradition. Perhaps, Galactic mused, feeling the ship's steady pulse through their hover stabilizers. There is wisdom in imperfection after all. The first sign of trouble came from a quiet outpost in the Carina sector. A routine status report simply stopped mid-transmission. The Conquerors investigation fleet arrived 12 hours later to find the outpost intact but completely abandoned, its crystalline structures still humming with power. In the following days, 3 more outposts went dark. High Commander Zix still stood before the Conquerors Defense Council, their normally iridescent scales dulled with concern. The tactical display showed a spreading shadow of silence across their territory. The intruders used some form of phase technology, they reported. Our sensor networks register nothing until it's too late. No warning, no trace of their passage, just silence. The council chamber's perfect acoustics carried worried whispers. Phase technology had been theorized but never successfully implemented. The power requirements alone should have made it impossible. Show us the Helios incident, one council member requested. The display shifted, showing the last transmission from their most advanced research station. A fleet of crystalline ships appeared from nothing, their forms somehow wrong, as if they occupied multiple spaces simultaneously. The station's defenses, the most sophisticated in known space, didn't even slow them down. They've taken 6 systems, 6 still continued. Our vessels engage, but... They paused, mandibles clicking in distress. The enemy ships seemed to exist partially out of phase with normal space. Our weapons passed through them with minimal effect. And our defensive doctrine is failing us. When our ships sustain damage, we withdraw them as designed. But the enemy, they don't allow retreat. They pursue damaged vessels until they're destroyed. We've lost 30 ships already. The council chamber erupted in alarmed discussions. The Conquerors fleet was built on principles of technological superiority and perfect tactical execution. Their ships were marvels of engineering, each one representing centuries of advancement. To lose so many so quickly was unprecedented. The Helios garrison, another council member asked, completely lost. The enemy targeted our shield generators first. Their weapons, they seemed to bypass our defensive fields entirely, as if they're striking from multiple dimensions at once. The tactical display updated again, showing the enemy's advance. Their fleet moved with perfect geometric precision, each ship maintaining exact distances from its neighbors. There was something unnaturally beautiful about their formation. The human settlement in the Vega sector, someone noted. Have they been informed? We sent warnings, Zixtil replied. But their response was unexpected. They've requested sensor data and tactical analysis, but they're not evacuating. Their ships are moving to defensive positions. This brought a moment of confused silence. The human vessels were primitive by Conquerors standards, relying on thick armor and kinetic weapons instead of energy shields and quantum torpedoes. Against an enemy that could bypass even Conquerors defenses, they should have no chance. Perhaps we should evacuate them by force, one council member suggested. Their loss would weigh heavily on our conscience. Before anyone could respond, new data flowed across the tactical displays. The enemy fleet had appeared in the Deneb system, home to one of the Conquerors' largest shipyards. The crystalline ships moved with their characteristic precision, their formation a perfect geometric pattern. But something was different this time. The shipyard's defensive grid was holding, its outdated but recently upgraded systems somehow resistant to the phase technology. The modifications bore clear signs of human influence, redundant power systems, backup generators, and layers of what humans called point defense. Interesting, Zixtil mused. The humans suggested these upgrades 3 months ago. We thought their ideas primitive, but a new alert flashed across the display. The human fleet was mobilizing, their ships moving with what seemed like reckless speed. The council watched in amazement as vessels they had dismissed as obsolete formed up for battle. The storm was breaking, and humanity was sailing straight into it. Captain Chen stood on the Thermopyla's bridge, watching the tactical display as the crystalline fleet phased into normal space. Their formation was perfect, too perfect. Each ship maintained precise distances from its neighbors, creating geometric patterns that seemed to ripple across space itself. Beautiful, Lieutenant Park whispered, then caught himself. In a terrifying sort of way. Battle stations, Chen ordered, her voice calm. Engineering, give me everything you can spare for the forward armor. Weapons, prepare broadsides. All repair teams to ready positions. The enemy ships moved with impossible grace, their crystalline forms shifting between dimensions in ways that made targeting systems struggle to maintain lock. The Conquerors vessels in the system had already begun their standard tactical withdrawal, their elegant shapes streaming away from the battle zone. Man. Communications called out. Conquerors Command is strongly advising us to retreat. They say their analysis shows we have no chance against the phase technology. Chen smiled slightly. Send them our thanks for the warning. Then signal all human ships. Execute Battle Plan Delta. The Thermopyla's engines roared to life, pushing the massive vessel forward. Around them, other human ships moved into formation. Thick-hulled warriors bearing names like Yamato, Victory, and Enterprise. Their formation looked chaotic compared to the enemy's perfect geometry, but there was purpose in their seeming disorder. Enemy ships approaching optimal range for their weapons, Tactical reported. They're ignoring us, Captain, moving straight for the civilian evacuation corridor. Not on my watch, Chen growled. All ships, execute scatter pattern. Draw their fire. Show them what happens when you threaten civilians in human space. The human fleet broke formation, each ship moving on its own vector. The enemy's perfect patterns faltered slightly, their crystalline ships attempting to track multiple targets moving in seemingly random directions. The first hits came moments later. Phase-shifted energy beams struck the Thermopyla's hull, passing partially through the armor, but not cleanly enough to avoid damage. Warning indicators flashed across multiple stations. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7, damage control reported. Repair teams responding. Secondary systems engaging. All weapons still operational. This was where human ship design proved its worth. The enemy weapons were devastating against Conqueror vessels, but the thick, layered armor of human ships proved surprisingly resistant. Each layer forced the phase-shifted beams to partially materialize, weakening them before they could reach vital systems. They're adapting, Park warned. Changing formation to focus fire on. The ship rocked as multiple hits struck simultaneously. On the tactical display, enemy vessels shifted position with liquid grace, attempting to find optimal firing solutions. Engineering reports power fluctuations. Communications announced. Chief Rodriguez says. He says the old girl's angry now. Chen nodded. Good. Signal all ships, close to broadside range. Let's show them why humans still use kinetic weapons. The Thermopyla's massive form turned ponderously, bringing its broadside batteries to bear. Along its flanks, rows of railgun ports opened like the gun ports of ancient sailing vessels. Around them, other human ships did the same. Enemy phase technology appears less effective against physical projectiles. Tactical noted with satisfaction. Their dimensional shifting can't fully avoid solid matter. The first broadside lit up space like a new sun. Thousands of hypervelocity rounds streaked toward the crystalline fleet, their simple physics proving surprisingly effective against advanced technology. The enemy's perfect formation broke for the first time, as ships were forced to fully materialize to avoid being torn apart by kinetic impacts. Repair teams report hull integrity holding at 70%. Damage control called out. All critical systems protected by redundancies. We can keep this up all day, Captain. Good, Chen replied, watching as the enemy struggled to adapt to humanity's seemingly primitive tactics. Because I have a feeling this is just the beginning. 6 hours into the battle, the Conquered observers made a startling discovery. The human fleet wasn't getting weaker, it was getting stronger. High Commander Zix still watched in fascination as repair crews swarmed across the hulls of damaged human vessels, their magnetic boots anchoring them as they worked in the midst of combat. The crews moved with practiced efficiency, singing their ancient songs as they sealed breaches and replaced damaged armor plates. Impossible, their science advisor whispered. The Thermopylae has sustained damage that would have destroyed 3 of our ships, yet their combat effectiveness is increasing. On the main tactical display, the battle unfolded like a dance between order and chaos. The crystalline ships maintained their geometric formations, but their once perfect patterns showed signs of degradation. Several enemy vessels listed at odd angles, their phase technology disrupted by accumulated kinetic damage. Status report on the human fleet, Zix Till ordered. The Thermopyla's repair teams have restored their primary weapon systems to 90% efficiency. The Enterprise reports all damage contained and is requesting permission to take point position. The Victory has rotated its damaged sections away from the enemy and is conducting repairs while maintaining fire. Inside the Thermopyla's engineering section, Chief Rodriguez orchestrated his repair teams like a conductor leading a symphony. Teams moved in coordinated waves, their efforts synchronized by the rhythm of old sea shanties transmitted across all frequencies. Port side teams, focus on frame supports, he called out. Starboard teams, I need those heat exchangers back online. Remember what the old girl likes, smooth wells and steady hands. The enemy fleet had never encountered this strategy before. Their tactical computers, programmed for perfect efficiency, struggled to calculate optimal targeting solutions against ships that refused to die. Each time they concentrated fire on a human vessel, repair teams would swarm the damaged sections, restoring functionality faster than their models predicted possible. Enemy fleet is adjusting formation, Tactical reported to Captain Chen. They appear to be targeting our repair teams specifically. Chen smiled grimly. That's what we were waiting for. Signal all ships. Execute Operation Anvil. The human fleet's seemingly chaotic movements suddenly revealed their true purpose. As the enemy ships shifted to target repair crews, they broke their own perfect formations. The phase technology that made them so formidable required precise geometric alignments between vessels. Forward batteries, target these coordinates, Chen ordered, marking points where the enemy's formation had weakened. All ships, synchronize broadsides on my mark. The repair crews, far from retreating, increased their activity. Their presence forced the enemy to maintain their disadvantageous positions or risk allowing the human ships to restore themselves to full fighting strength. Chief Rodriguez reports all critical systems restored. Communications announced. He says the Thermopylae is singing her war song now. The coordinated broadside, when it came, was devastating. Hypervelocity rounds struck the enemy ships at their most vulnerable points, where their disrupted formations left gaps in their phase field coverage. 3 crystalline vessels shattered instantly, their perfect forms breaking into clouds of glittering shards. Enemy fleet attempting to reorganize, Tactical reported. Their phase field synchronization is failing. They're trying to withdraw. Not happening, Chen responded. Signal all ships, pursuit course. Repair teams to remain deployed. We keep firing until they surrender or shatter. The Conquerors observers watched in amazement as the human fleet pressed their advantage. Their ships, bearing fresh scars and hasty repairs, moved with the relentless determination of ancient predators. Fascinating, Zik still mused. They turned their repairs into a weapon. Forced the enemy to choose between allowing them to recover or breaking formation. A strategic principle emerged that would soon become famous throughout known space. In battle against humanity, every moment you don't destroy them completely makes them stronger. 3 months after the Battle of Deneb, the Conquerors shipyards hummed with unprecedented activity. Crystalline construction berths housed vessels of a new design, ones that merged elegant Conquerors engineering with distinctly human principles. Senior designer Valtic stood beside Captain Chen in the observation deck, watching as workers installed thick armor plates over a quantum shield generator. The hybrid design had initially seemed contradictory, even crude, but recent events had proven its worth. Your repair crews have been remarkably patient with our engineers, Valtic noted, their scales shifting in amusement. Though I believe Chief Rodriguez still mutters about our overcomplicated nonsense when he thinks we cannot hear. Chen laughed. He's actually impressed. Says your quantum systems have potential, once you learn to build them with proper maintenance access. Below them, the first of the new Defender-class vessels neared completion. Its hull bore the streamlined grace of Conquerors design, but beneath the surface lay human-inspired redundancies and repair corridors. Most striking were the backup systems, crystalline technology designed to be repaired by crews in heavy suits, working in the midst of battle. The Council has officially adopted your combat repair doctrine, Valtic said, though our crews are still adjusting to the concept of singing while they work. They'll learn. Music helps keep time, builds unity. Speaking of which, Chen gestured to where a work crew was mounting something on the new ship's bridge, a brass bell, crafted on Earth, and transported across light years. Ah yes, the traditional instruments. The Council debated their practical value extensively. And we discovered that traditions need not be practical to have worth. The observation deck's displays showed similar scenes across Conquerors space. Shipyards everywhere were retrofitting vessels with redundant systems and repair corridors. Training centers taught the basics of damage control under fire, while human instructors helped crews understand the art of keeping a wounded ship fighting. "Tell me about the name," Valtic requested, indicating the vessel below them. "Unity. It holds significance." Chen nodded. "Chosen jointly by human and Concordat committees, a symbol of what we can accomplish together. Each ship in the class will bear a name representing cooperation between our peoples." A gentle chime interrupted them. The shipyard's shift change signal. In the construction berths, crews exchanged positions with practiced efficiency. Chen smiled as she heard a Concordat work team attempting one of the simpler sea shanties, their crystalline voices adding an otherworldly harmony to the ancient melody. "We found records of the Phase fleet's origin," Valtic said after a moment. "They came from beyond the galactic rim, seeking perfect order. They never expected to encounter species who embraced imperfection as a strength." "Perfect systems have perfect failure points," Chen replied. "Give me a patch-welded hull and a crew that knows their ship's voice any day." The Unity's quantum cores pulsed softly as testing began, their crystalline resonance mixing with the deeper thrum of human-designed backup generators. The sound was neither purely human nor Concordat, but something new. A harmony of both approaches. "The Council has commissioned a historical archive," Valtic mentioned. "Recording the lessons learned from these events, they wish to ensure future generations understand the value of different perspectives." "Any conclusions so far?" "Several. But perhaps most importantly, true strength lies not in avoiding damage, but in how one responds to it, both in ships and in civilizations." They watched as a mixed crew of humans and Concordat engineers conducted final checks on the Unity systems. The vessel's design represented thousands of compromises, endless debates between efficiency and redundancy, elegance and durability. The result was something neither civilization could have created alone. "She's beautiful," Chen said softly. "Indeed," Valtic agreed. "Not perfect, but perhaps something better, prepared for an imperfect universe." Above them, the stars beckoned, holding new challenges for ships and crews that carried the best of both worlds into the unknown.